everyone. Admin should log into the admin account. Click on Account or Service Account in the top right hand corner and navigate to Settings. First, the account setup. If we then scroll down, we will see the Manager Suite options where the admin has the choice of allowing the counselor to set data default column or to have the admin set the data default columns, and the counselors would then inherit the students with those data default columns. The counselor can always add additional columns to the admin's data default, or the admin can allow each counselor to set their own data default columns. So whereas you may have a counselor who is only focused on essay writing, that counselor is then capable of setting their own default data columns so that those data columns are only reflective of what their needs are for the student. And then your college counselor would have columns that are specific to what they do with the student. Your account is also, it's possible for you to assign a primary counselor and sub-counselors to the one student. So let us know if that's something that you want to look at as well. So here we have, I am coming to your undergraduate data manager. And now we see this is all of the data. So underneath each one of these banners is a whole bunch of data. And what that means is that this is the title header of the column of data, and this is the list that it is turned on in. So you'll notice right here that there is a small key. So the singular head indicates the counselor's list, the grad cap indicates the student's list, and the heart indicates the app tracker. So when I open this and I see majors, it is not turned on for the counselor list. It is turned on for the student list, and majors is not available in the app tracker. So now I'm going to minimize this banner. And now based on the data that's already turned on in each of your columns, so in that same key we see that 25 columns out of 40 are turned on for the counselor list, and then 37 for student, and 24 for the app tracker. Now I want to go through your default data columns and explain some of the methodology for them. So as I scroll down your screen, we then come to the order of your columns. So we have chosen the data that should default at the top, and now that that chosen data is displayed here, we can now use these tiles to move the columns in the preferred order that we wish for them to appear. And then if we decided that we no longer wanted this data point in our list of default data columns, we can also use the X to get rid of that data column, so to turn it off. I want to remind you that first the college list begins with the counselor's list. These are the columns that have been identified as the most often selected by counselors in the counselor list. And I want to explain how some of these are used, and then I will also do that for the student list and the app tracker. I strongly encourage you to keep this video for future counselors that you hire so that they understand how the data columns work. So here we have the Notes to Student column. In the counselor's list, the Notes to Student column is where the counselor is going to list the reasons why the school is added to the list, because when the counselor promotes the school from the counselor's list to the student's list, the Notes to Student column will carry forward to the student's list so the student understands why the counselor included that school on the list. Next, on the student's list, the student would also have their own column for their own student research notes right next to the counselor's notes to the student. Back to the counselor's list, we then identify where the city and state of the school, and then we have the selectivity column. The selectivity column is self-reported by the college. So when it says self-reported here, that's self-reported from the common data set by the university or college directly. So when the school is saying that they are extremely selective, they are then giving you the data points in which they are making that statement. So this column is usually turned on in the counselor's list, whereas the other SAT, ACT columns are not turned on in the counselor's list because the counselor can see all of that information just here in one column and usually can parse whether or not that student is in that bracket just based on that. I'm going to pause and navigate to the Danny demo so that you can see that data. Here I am in your sample student, and I've pulled up Smith College, and now we see the selectivity self-reported column, and we can see that the school is telling us exactly who it is that they are looking for. This is a professional to professional message. So if you were looking at your student, you're looking at their at a glance bar at the top of the screen, and then you're seeing where they fall here to know if that student is a match for the school. In this case, it looks like we've got a good match for this school. I'm now back in your default data columns, and we have the percentage of admissions rate. We then have that average high school GPA. If you did want to remove SAT and ACT because you have the selectivity column, you would just click these X's. We then see that we have two bright green columns here, and I want to remind you that these are the application requirement columns. So if I were to scroll up into my data, I would then see that green banner again, and then we see all of the application guidelines available. I close that and come back down to reordering the screen. So now I am reading exactly what the school has said about what their testing policy is, both for test policy but also for how they will grant credit for AP and IB. We then have the tags column. The tags column is for the counselor to tag the school by any keyword that the counselor chooses. And then those tags will be saved for your account to make use of in my database. The links column is to add URL addresses so that you may save links specific to the school. The FISC overlapping schools column is if this school isn't a fit, this column will give you other alike schools so that you could shop for more schools. Then we have the counselor's opinions column that is going to give you opinions that are crowdsourced and entered in by other users of CounselMore. You will only be allowed to look at the counselor opinions column 10 times. After your 10th time, you will be locked out of the counselor's opinions column until you add your own opinion, because this is a community where you must put in to get out. So we want all counselors participating. So if you are able to take what you need and leave the rest, that we only ask you to also contribute to the shared information gathering. And you will notice that all of the comments are anonymous, so they are risk-free. You then also have the total undergraduate enrollment, which is different than the total campus enrollment. And a counselor will pick and choose which one they want to show a student, because students are often locked into the idea that 5,000 people is not enough. Then we also have the 3-2 programs. More families want bang for their buck. So if they are aware that they can go to a school on a 3-2 program and go for an undergrad but graduate with a master's included, that's bang for their buck. So that column has been included here on the counselor list, but it is usually most seen over here on the students list. Many of these items that I'm going through with you here, I won't repeat again, but you will see them that they are also included on the students list. Demonstrated interest weight, any of the columns that you are seeing with weight, this is the holistic evaluation performed by the school and reported to the common data set. I strongly encourage you to leave these columns on in your counselor list so as you can know where your student falls. You'll also notice in your counselor's list that underneath the menu button there is a report. that report is for Evaluate Fit, and it is more likely something that you will want to generate and share with families as an additional product. And then, of course, there is the AIDS form and analysis, which is coming directly from the school. Going over to the students list, many of these are repeats for you, so I won't bother, and many of them are self-explanatory. However, this is going to the Clery Act, and many times this is really a mom-focused column, so you may want to include it, but once the school is promoted to the students list, I would encourage you to go through your student list of columns and not to overwhelm your customers with data, but instead to promote the school forward to the students list and then turn off data columns that you feel are not relevant to the student. So if they don't need to know about campus hangouts yet, I would remove that from the student's initial list so that way then the student could ask me about it, and then I can always turn those columns on for any individual student. So what I am saying is that I believe that you should leave it on as a default column, but after you promote the school to the student's list and before you demonstrate the list to the student, that you then omit any columns that would be ancillary to their discovery or just, added noise in the list, and that you trash can those columns knowing confidently that you can always turn them back on for any one student at any time. But mostly we don't want to drown them in data. Again, we have the green columns, which I will remind you are the admissions application guidelines taken directly from the website, the Common App, or directly from a representative of the school, and that is validated by CounselMore. All of the data is date stamped. You will then see that you have a purple column that is next to the green column, and the green column would then be the guideline or the requirement, and then the purple column is the status of that requirement. And these status columns are quite powerful because they can also generate assignments with one click. So you would be discussing with the student, yes, this is the test policy, how do you think that impacts you? Now we're going to record what it is that we believe that the student should move forward with this school. Like, we are going to remove this school from the list because the testing policy looks like it's just too much to be able to move forward with. And then you would remove that school from the students list, pushing it back to the counselors list, where you could always promote forward again if circumstances changed, and those notes would always remain with the school and then also next to the policy column. Again, we have the policy column of recommendations, and then we have the status of those recommendations. So not just the status, but also the counselor wants to be recording in that the school has said that under their policy of recommendations, they have 2 required, 1 optional. So the counselor would also be listing that of your optional letters of recommendation, I am suggesting that we use this particular letter from your clergy because this will be a good identifier for the school. Something like that. You're also listing the strategy as part of the status column. Now, I wanted to point out essays and other prompts. All of your essays and other prompts are collected and available for you in CounselMore for the top 1,000 schools. And then, of course, you have that status column here. Now, when it says essay status, you'll also notice over here in the app tracker column that there is a different type of essay status column. This is the sup essay status. I also noticed that you had added your own custom column of essay requirements, and I'm wondering if that's because perhaps you're working with an essay person and that essay person needs to have their own default data columns. And it is completely appropriate for you to put that here in the admin account so that when the counselor inherits the student, because the admin account will receive the student and then decide which counselor or counselors that student should be assigned to. So it makes sense that it would initially be turned on and be a default data column here. But I wanted to point that out because it may also be redundant for you, so I wanted to give you this information to think it through. We have the essay prompt here. You then have the essay status. So essay status here usually means the PIQs for the University of California system, or the Common App essay of the Common App would be qualified here. But then when you then promote schools from the student list to the app tracker, we then have that essay, another prompt that continues. But usually the Common App essay is usually wrapping up. So the status of that Common App essay would be here in student list when you're saying, okay, we've gotten to a pretty solid draft. So the timeline that is usual is June of the student's junior year is when you're wrapping up the student list, and you have promoted most of the schools that you will apply to already over to the app tracker, and the common essay is wrapping. Then you would be moving to the app tracker list, because now we're going to really dig into the supplementals of each application, because now that the Common App has opened, we're more aware of what those supplemental essays might be, but also we are now seeing trigger essays, stealth essays, and we can talk more specifically about that. But that would be what a supplemental essay status is. But you may be recording essay requirements based on, this is the school, so the school needs to have XYZ mentioned in the essay. I'm wondering if that might be that. And then I would even encourage you to choose one or the other, and to only use one essay status column. Because the essay requirements, they're already here for you. CounselMore takes care of that for you. So I don't know if you need this column. Let me just look back over here, make sure that you have a definition. Yeah, you have a definition. Okay, so now we have that notes to students, student research notes. Then now on the app tracker, we begin to introduce another color column. So let me explain. Again, the green is the policy column. So this is telling us, is it a Common App member? And now we are saying the selected major. The reason why selected major comes after Common App is because the student will have seen a major on the website, and then they log into the Common App, and that major is not listed in the Common App, because in the Common App you can only apply for accredited degrees / majors, whereas any old thing can be put on a website and called a major, but it does not mean that it is an accredited degree. So on the official application, you're applying for an accredited degree. So what I want my student to do is I want my student to go in the Common App and to tell me what is the actual major you will be applying for. Because when they pull their school to their dashboard in the Common App and they choose the major within that school's application, the defining supplemental essays will only appear then. I need to know what our strategy will be for each one of their applications on their app tracker, and I can only build that strategy if I know what major they are confirming. So when the student is confirming in the blue columns, they are making commitments with the counselor so that the counselor can proceed with strategy. So then the student tells me this is the major I will be applying for. Sometimes in this column the student will say, well, on the website it said this, when I went to the Common App it said that, so I chose this. And that's what you're going to see in that column. Then we have the different deadline columns, and we want all of those together because we then want to apply the deadline strategy. So I'm going to go back up to your columns up here and look for deadline strategy, just in case that's something that you would want to turn on. So I see it here. So I'm going to turn that on. You're welcome to turn it off, of course. but I'm just going to show you how we do it here. So then after the student commits to me what selected major they're going to go after, I am then going to look at the different deadlines and plan which would be best per school. I'm going to pause for a moment. I have moved over to the app tracker to show you those deadline columns in practice. So here I have all of the deadlines, and then this allows me to then say, okay, well, you're not going to be able to do, they don't have an early action, right? So the only is an early decision. You're not ready to make that sort of financial commitment, even though Smith is your #1 school. So I'm going to rearrange your schools a little bit, because we do have a school where we could use early action. So I am now going to record my deadline strategy and have a conversation with the student about it, and then the student is going to commit to me which deadline they are going to choose for this particular school. Because once the student makes that choice, I then can proceed with my strategy. But with this commitment locked in place, we now know that, all right, so now we're applying to these schools, this is the deadline strategy has now been committed, and now we're going to continue to navigate through the essays. Back to your settings, default data columns, we are here in the stack under the app tracker again. So then I'm going to record my deadline strategy. Even though Smith is your #1 school, we have moved it to the 2nd position so that we can take advantage of the early admissions process at Amherst. And then the student commits to me their chosen deadline. I then read the essay prompts again, read the supplementals if any are coming through. Again, data is date stamped. So as it is August, our essay supplements are updated by the 2nd and 3rd day of August. You can go back and check our historical data updates for that. And then you're going to record any updates, and then from this column you are going to generate the document for the essay prompt. I'm back here in the app tracker and looking at the essay and other prompts column. So here you will see the essay prompt. You can check the date stamp of when it was last updated, and then you have this document here. You're going to click on the document, and you see that the tooltip is showing for us right now, and it's saying generate doc with essay into students' Google Drive folder. So with one click that will happen. You can then go find that essay just by clicking on the Students Files tab, where you will see a folder called Essays, and that it has been generated for both you and the student. After you have generated the essay, you will want to create an assignment that will then track this essay. So we are now working on supplements. So I am going to click the clipboard, and we see the assignment modal, and I will say start writing sup essays. I could link directly to anything inside the student's Google Drive folder. So that essay that I have just generated is something that I would link in the Google Drive folder. You will hit create, and then this assignment we would then find on the student's assignments tab. You can also then set the audience and then set the start date. So if you wanted to work your student's entire app tracker, school by school, inputting what the strategy and task would be for each of the requirements and generating the assignment that tracks the requirement, then those can be automatically released as well as emailed to the student at an appropriate time. So if you wanted the student to do all of the Smith applications first and then to move on to the Amherst applications and then move on to the next and the next, you could set your assignments up so that they are releasing in a timely way during app season. Most counselors will organize their app trackers in the end of July, beginning of August, and then allow the software to do the rest of the work throughout app season. And what the counselor is doing is just checking on returning assignments that are now coming in for the student, because the counselor has already set up all application assignments over the summer. So app season should be very manageable for counselors when they are working those status and strategy columns in July and August. Returning back to your settings menu now, we are here in that supplemental essay status where we then launched the assignment. We would then do the same for the following. So we have the test policy. So we would be thinking about whether or not we are sending in the student standardized test scores, and if the student took the SAT, the impact on sending the AP test scores, because if we send one, we have to send the other. So then here in the test reporting status, I am going to list what is our testing strategy for this school per their policy on test policy and AP scores, and how that impacts that specific student. And then I would generate an assignment off of this status column that says, when you log into the College Board, I do not believe that you can separate your SAT score from your AP scores, and that they'll send the entire report. And if that's the case, then you can't send anything to that school because you're in the lower 25%. So that is what I would be listing. So I hope that you're understanding that the status is also the strategy, and then the strategy is being emailed school by school, requirement by requirement, directly to the student, but also the parent, because the parent needs to see that the counselor has accounted for the test policy strategy at each individual school the student is applying for. It's a demonstration of your experience. It's an investment in your marketing, because parents are going to pass those things on. This is how great our counselor was. Interview policy, what is the status and strategy of the interview policy? Same with letters of rec. And then the aid forms have been turned on here. I notice that you have your merit aid gauge on. I don't think that this merit aid gauge is still accurate, so you may want to trash can that. Think about how you feel about that. Then we have the app submitted, yes, no, the app submitted date. We have created the campus portal. So the student submits the application, they think they're all done. This will help you to generate an assignment that is emailed to both student and parent, reminding them of the specific school portal that they need to also log into. Students are not good with, hey, did you log into all of your applicant portals? They're better with, I need you to log into the Smith applicant portal now. Then you have your application notes. This is usually recording, is there any additional information that was added to the additional information section of the application? I record that here because, again, these are your data columns, these dark blue columns. So in your final data reporting, you'll be able to export these. So again, anything you list in here, you'd want to be the caveat to whatever that application is. We then have the initial, I suppose this FAFSA should go up here with the other aid forms. You then have the initial decision and the final decision. So you'll notice that when you open up the initial decision, accepted decline is grayed out. That is because you're to record the final decision in the final decision column. I'm going to navigate back to the list to demonstrate that for you now, and we are almost done, I promise. In the initial decision column, you'll notice that we have all of the initial decision options, but then accepted decline is grayed out. That is purposeful because we want the user to know that they're not recording those options here, and that they instead need to come to the final decision column and now record. And then you'll see that those options that are really initial decision are here, but they are grayed out. That is on purpose in order to remind the user that there is an initial decision column. Okay, that is how we use our data default columns. This is what is currently set up in your account. I've now explained how we can turn them on and turn them off. I have also explained that your counselors are going to receive students from the admin with these data columns. However, the counselors will be able to re-manipulate the columns per each one of the students that are assigned to them. If you are using the functionality where you can assign one counselor and then sub-counselors to any one student, then it is the primary counselor's default data columns that will be seen, but then your sub-counselor can of course make new choices when that student is assigned to them as the primary. All right, I hope that is helpful to you. Please let me know if there are any individual columns that I can answer for you. All the best. Bye-bye.